10 years ago, I wrote an article for the Huffington Post called 27 Signs You May Be a Doormat at Work. And it showed up in my feed a couple of weeks ago, and I was so surprised. And then when I reread it, what really surprised me wasn't how true it all still is. It was how much I could now feel what it was describing in my body. When I wrote that, I'd studied and seen how it was supposed to work. So I was teaching the concepts, and people were getting results. Looking back, though, I was intellectualizing confidence. I was teaching people models so they could practice. But confidence isn't knowing what to say, although that absolutely is very helpful at first. It's actually a behavior, and it gets ruled by our nervous system. So this is what's really important, is that the list isn't about weakness. It's about what happens when capable people don't feel safe, when they are more worried about what the needs of others are than their own. They're not crazy. They're in survival mode. They've developed these patterns to feel safer. So from the people around them, they learn to freeze when someone is angry. We see so many behaviors that come from these automatic responses, where we're second guessing ourselves, like I should get an award for that one, letting others take credit, avoiding those hard conversations, overworking, walking on eggshells around people, being terrified of making mistakes and being rejected. Most people call these behaviors being nice, but in real life, especially at work, that's what a nervous system looks like when it learned early on that conflict is dangerous, being disliked is risky, and keeping the peace is how you're going to survive. So then we become agreeable, reliable, helpful, low maintenance, and in dysfunctional environments, those traits do not get rewarded. They get used. You've seen it firsthand. You don't get promoted for absorbing chaos. You've seen that. You don't get respected for overfunctioning. Have you burned out or come close yet? When you decide not to rock the boat, not to bother anyone, you don't get paid more for not having needs of your own. You just get more tired. What I didn't understand when I wrote that article is this: you cannot out-communicate a trauma response. I started my coaching before I got into trauma work, and I was calling myself a strategist for recovering doormats. Kind of cute and catchy, but it wasn't the whole story. You can learn all the scripts in the world: how to set boundaries, how to be assertive, how to speak up. But if your body still believes that that whole story, saying no will feel like it's going to cost you love or connection, or asking for more money will risk holding on to that job. And you don't want to upset the janitor or the landlord, right? Because you will upset them. You might get retaliated against. So if your past has convinced you that being visible will cost you safety because you've been the target of those who prefer you small, you will just keep folding. And it's not because you're weak. It's because you're protecting yourself. And integrating what we learned and keeping the lessons from what we learned, we stop making excuses for ourselves or for others. And we start expecting to be treated with kindness and care. And it's not a huge step for most people, but if it is, you're not going to recover. And it was huge in my recovery to understand that. And it's not because I became tougher, but it's because I became safer inside my own body. I actually learned to expect safety, and I was able to set boundaries so that those who are in my inner circle treat me with respect and appreciation. And even kindness happens very naturally. And then something magical started happening. Because when your nervous system feels safer, something really quiet and powerful happens. You notice that you stop chasing approval. You stop managing other people's emotions. You stop apologizing for just being here. You stop shrinking. You stop taking responsibility for things that never belong to you. Have you ever heard the word over-responsible? Like, it sounds like a positive, but another word is being a superwoman. It means the same thing. And there is a huge cost. So when you do the work to put yourself first, there will be people who will not like your truth telling. They're going to call you disloyal. They might all gang up on you and question your sanity or blame you for just giving up, walking away. But the truth is, you still care. You're still kind, but just you're no longer available for being slowly drained. And that's what boundaries really are. They're not walls, they're not harshness, although it kind of can feel harsh if you're really new at it, but it's none of those things. It's just the truth. And boundaries are not about being difficult, they're about clarity. They're about connecting in a compassionate way. And clarity changes everything in your professional life. You start you start leaving the bad deals on the table. And that's not going to work for me. You start asking for what you're worth. No, I need this much to make this work. At first it's hard, but then you start building a muscle of expecting to be paid what you're worth. You start being honest instead of strategic. You stop confusing loyalty with endurance and longevity. Because first of all, you're loyal to yourself. So you stop staying in places that require you to disappear, to shrink yourself. And here's the part that nobody will tell you. As not at work anyway, as your nervous system becomes more regulated, your income, your confidence, and your leadership, they all grow. Not because you're hustling harder, but because you finally stop betraying yourself to stay safe. And this is what I've spent the last decade perfecting in my own life. And I've added that to my coaching. I've created an entire keynote and a body of work around understanding trauma and why so many of us don't feel like we matter, and how dysfunctional systems at home and at work quietly feed that. Because when people don't feel like they matter, they tolerate things that cost them everything. And that's why my work lives under one simple truth. You matter. Even if someone is angry at you or they're judging you, you matter. If this resonates, not just in your head, but in your body, you're not broken, you're waking up. And if you're ready to start having different conversations in your career, in your relationships, or in somewhere in your life, you're welcome to follow me or even reach out. Or better yet, just simply sit with what this stirred in you and reflect on it. We don't change because someone is pushing us. We change when we're done giving power to old, outdated stories. We change when something finally feels true inside. And sometimes that's where the real conversation begins, with ourselves.